All right, everybody, welcome to the 66th episode of the Bald Eagle Podcast. I am Sean Cressman. I am the Bald Eagle. I want to apologize, first of all. It's been a while. Since I have done my podcast. Took a little bit of a break, but I'm back, and we're going to do a draft recap. But before I go into everything, let me remind everybody of the rules for the Bald Eagle Podcast. Okay. Number one, and most importantly, and this is, I think, more important currently than it has been for a while, no politics. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about anything like that. So you won't ever have to worry about any of that stuff. We are void of any of that crap. Right. Number two, I don't talk about my personal information. I don't talk about anybody else's personal information. If the players do things, in their personal lives, we don't talk about any of that stuff. I personally don't like the little moments where Fox and everybody talks about the past of the players, even during the draft. I don't care what they did in their life. I want to know what they did on the football field. And lastly, I'm not censored, so I say whatever I want. So if you have kids around and you don't want them to hear me, then you might want to mute me. All right. So Bald Eagle Podcast countdown. We are counting down to the NFL schedule, which will happen in roughly 7 days, Wednesday, May 12th. That's actually 8 days. I don't know, 7 or 8 days, Wednesday, May 12th. We already know who we're going to play. Of course, we play the Cowgirls, the Washington Commanders, the Commies, and the New York Giants. We play those guys both home and away. And as a reminder, we will have the two people will be coming back to the link. Possibly, well, no, actually, they'll both be coming back to the link. Carson Wentz is now the quarterback of the Washington Commanders. We play him twice at home and away, and then we play the Jacksonville Jaguars at home at the link. So Doug Peterson will be returning to the link. So that'd be interesting. Other home games that we play the Green Bay Packers at home. We play the Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans Saints, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Tennessee Titans. All those teams at home, which means AJ Brown will have be able to play against his former team. And then we play the Arizona Cardinals, the Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Houston Texans, and Indianapolis Colts all away. Training camp, no solid date yet. It is scheduled for, generally it's mid to late July. Last year it was July 27th when almost every team started training camp. So most people expect it to start around the same time this year. Okay, preseason, now August 4th through 7th. That is a Hall of Fame weekend in Canton, Ohio. That is also the first week of preseason. The Hall of Fame game is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The following week, I'm assuming, is going to be preseason week 2. There hasn't been a schedule, so I'm sort of guessing, which is August 12th and August 14th. The weekend after that, August 19th through 21st, is week 3. And then NFL Kickoff is Thursday, September 8th. And that's on a Thursday. I don't know that they've announced the teams yet. They may announce that early on the 12th, but I don't believe they've announced the teams. And lastly, Super Bowl 57, February 12th, 2023, State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, home of the Arizona Cardinals. And that would end the postseason. Okay, so let's move to the draft. I don't want to talk too fast because we're ripping through things pretty quickly already. But the draft was just this past weekend, Thursday through Saturday, April 28th to 30th, held in Las Vegas, Nevada. Didn't get the viewership that it did last year, or the last 2 years. 2020 hit a record 15.6 million viewers. 2021 was a second place viewership of 12.6 million. But this year we didn't have quite that many. We had 10.03 million viewers. And mostly because, well, there were two reasons that we're assuming that it may have happened. Number one, both 2020 and 2021 were the first two drafts that were held since 2012 that were not during the NBA playoffs. Due to COVID, the NBA playoffs were extended or I don't know their schedule. I don't watch basketball. I'm a football guy, so it didn't compete. In 2022, we competed with with a few series clinching games in the NBA for the Phoenix Suns our team, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Dallas Mavericks. Now, I don't know anything about basketball, so don't ask me what the score was or what happened. In addition, 8 teams going into the draft didn't even have a first-round pick. They had traded them away they traded them away. The Bears, the Colts, the Browns, 49ers, Broncos, Raiders, Dolphins, and Rams. And in those teams, you have the Rams, which is a huge West Coast team. The Bears, they have a pretty good market. So bigger market teams. During the draft itself, the Buccaneers and the Cardinals both traded away their first-round pick. So 10 teams didn't even have a first-round pick this year. So that's probably why viewership was down, in addition to the competition with the NBA. We started off the draft with a major trade with the New Orleans Saints. We gave them our 16th overall pick, our 19th overall pick, and a 6th round, 194th overall pick for this year. And we got back their 18th overall pick, a 3rd round, 101st overall in 2022, a 7th round, 237th overall in 2022. We got a 1st round pick in 2023 and a 2nd round pick in 2024. So good deal for us. Then we traded, and this gets very confusing. We going into the draft before all the trading, we had 10 picks, 3 of which were in the top 10 or the first round. But we ended up only having 1, and we traded the other one away, and we'll talk about that. We then traded picks 15, 124, 162, and 166 for the Texans to get pick 13. And with that 13th overall pick in the first round, we selected Georgia defensive tackle Jordan Davis, this massive defensive tackle with the ability to run fast enough and to run down quarterbacks. So to give you an idea of some of his specs, he is 6'6", 340 pounds. His height and his weight compared to other defensive tackles at combines was 99th and 97th percentile. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.78 seconds. That was in the 98th percentile, and he was the first player over 330 pounds to run a 4.78 since 2006. And to give you a comparison, that is faster than Patrick Mahomes, who runs a 4.8, Dak Prescott, who runs a 4.79, Daniel Jones, who is one of our competitors in the NFC East, who runs a 4.81, and only a 100th of a second slower than Carson Wentz when he did his combine. He had a 4.77, but that was before he injured himself. And I doubt he's down. He's aged and been injured, so I doubt he's down to a 4.77. So this guy is not only a huge guy, a run blocker. We need help. We need help in our run game. I don't think we need as much help as most people think we do. But we need help in our run game, and he'll provide us with that. He'll also be able to get to that quarterback. So I think it was a great pick. He ran his 20-yard in 2.74 seconds, 98th percentile. 10-yard in 1.63 seconds, 99th percentile. His vertical leap is 32 inches. That's 83 percentile. And his broad jump was 10 feet, 3 inches, and that was a 99th percentile. And that was also the longest by a 300-pounder since 2003. So big, massive guy. Hopefully this means that the Eagles learned from their mistakes, not picking the big guys like Micah Parsons. I always forget his name, but the running back for the Seattle Seahawks that we missed out on. Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I'm going to look it up. So hopefully we've learned our lesson that when there is a large, physically gifted be a receiver or lineman, that we're taking that size into play. So DK Metcalf, we missed out on him. Huge monster of a guy, real fast, and we I think that's the year we drafted Jalen Reagor, perhaps. I don't know, but it wasn't a successful draft. He would have been a much better addition than whoever we drafted was. So in college, Jordan Davis was an All-American and SEC as a freshman. SEC All-Freshman honors as a freshman. Played 11 games, started 4 in 2018. In 2020, he was a second-team All-SEC. He missed some time due to an elbow injury and still got that designation. He was a first-team AP All-American and All-SEC pick. He also won the Chuck Bednarik Award and Outland Trophy winner in 2021. Started 14 of the 15 games he played, had 32 tackles, 5.5 for a loss, and 2 sacks. So good production in his senior year. And he's going to fit very well, I think, with Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and second-year lineman Milton Williams, who's been doing pretty well since we drafted him. Now, our next pick would have been the 18th. We traded that, and this was a blockbuster deal, I think an amazing deal. We traded the 18th and the 101st overall pick for wide receiver A.J. Brown from the Titans. If you guys watched my podcast last year in free agency and during the draft, I wanted a large, physical, veteran wide receiver. I thought we should have added that before we added Devonta Smith. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have drafted Devonta Smith. He was high. He was a Heisman winner. I'm glad we went for it. But I wanted a big physical wide receiver. And we didn't get him last year, but we got him this year. A.J. Brown, I think, will be a meaningful addition to our wide receiver core. Go Birds. So I'm excited about that too. He is 6'1", 226 pounds. I don't think that'll make him the tallest wide receiver that we have, but 226 pounds I think will make him the biggest. He runs a 40 and 4.49, which is pretty fast, 36.5-inch vertical. He was drafted in the second round, 51st overall in 2019 by the Tennessee Titans, and he played college at Ole Miss. Started 36 of 43 games while he was with the Titans, had 185 receptions, 2,995 yards. He averaged 6.2 yards per reception, 24 touchdowns, and 69.7 yards per game. Now, if you think about it, he in his 3 seasons, he outproduced every single wide receiver that the Eagles have had. You could probably even combine 2 of our wide receivers' production and still not get that kind of productions over 3 years. In fact, Devonta Smith was by far our best wide receiver for a while. In 2019 and 2020, he had over 1,000 receiving yards. He was nominated to the Pro Bowl in 2020, and I think he's going to do a great job complementing a smaller, quicker Devonta Smith. So I think that's a great 1-2 punch. Not to even consider the free agent pickups that we got through that we'll go over in a moment, but excellent trade. So. In my opinion, and let me be honest, I'm not a college guy. I'm not a college football guy, so I don't know a lot about going into the draft. I didn't do a lot of research. I hadn't been doing my podcast, so I had other things going on. So I didn't have a lot of knowledge about the college guys, but I think, from what I could tell anyway, there wasn't a wide receiver that was worth the 18th pick. And A.J. Brown is a seasoned. You know what you get from him. You know what he can do in the NFL, and I think that's a major positive. Okay, so that's the trade with 18th and 1st overall. So we were left with a second round, 51st overall, Nebraska center Cam Jurgens. He's 6'2", 303 pounds. Also very fast compared to other centers. A 40-yard dash, he did in 4.92, which is 97th percentile, according to his position. 20-yard dash, 2.85 seconds, 96th percentile. The 10-yard, 1.71, 95th percentile. He was apparently a tight end in high school, drafted as a tight end, but he moved to center his first year at Nebraska after not even snapping a single ball in high school or before transitioning to center. He ended up being a 3-year starter. He was third team All Big Ten honors in 2021. And there's rumors, and he didn't really confirm as much as everybody rumored for it to happen, but that Jason Kelce had a hand in recruiting him. Thought he was an excellent center, one of the best centers he's seen in a while. So some help from Jason Kelce, who will be his mentor and who he will replace when Kelce decides to retire. We also had 3 more picks. I'm not going to go into detail about those. I'm going to save that for the next podcast. But we did have a 3rd round, 83rd overall. We drafted Georgia linebacker Nakobe Dean. I'm not a big college guy, but from what I could tell, he was much higher on a lot of people's mock drafts than what he went. He went 3rd round due to perhaps some issues with injuries. But we need linebackers. We don't have strong linebackers, so I'm happy that he's a linebacker. We'll talk about what he did in college next week. 6th round, 181st overall, Kansas linebacker Kyron Johnson, another linebacker. I'm not familiar, but I'll be familiar by the time I talk about him next week. And then 6th round, 198th overall, we drafted SMU tight end Grant Calcaterra. I also read during my research that we are moving J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to tight end, which I think is a good move because he just couldn't get open as a wide receiver. Philly Boy for Life 20 on Instagram. Go Birds, fly Eagles, fly. By the way, if anybody out there has any comments, my one viewer, by all means, you can comment on whatever social media you're watching me on, and I can discuss your comments and put them up on the screen. Unless you're on Instagram, because Instagram I still can't stream directly to, as far as I know. Okay, so that was our draft. 6 picks. We went over including the trade with AJ Brown. Went over the first 3. We'll go over the next 3 next week. So it's got a little bit of Eagles news and a little bit of catch up. So I haven't had the show for a few months. So there's a couple of things that might be old to you guys, but I figured I'd mention it because I thought it was impactful. That's happened over the last few months. First of all, as far as Eagles news is concerned, Dick Vermeil, former head coach, got us to the Super Bowl in 1980. We lost to the Raiders, but had a great career. And is being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Philly Boy for Life 20 on Instagram. How do I feel about safety? He's an Epps believer. Well, you're not the only one that's an Epps believer. I think recently someone tweeted that we should watch out for Marcus Epps. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how that's going to pan out. We haven't had a standout at safety. We haven't had anybody do well, but Epps had some moments. So we'll see. We'll see how everything pans out. But that is a weakness of ours. I think, frankly, safety and corner is a weakness. I know that we have Darius Slay, but on the other side, the other corner didn't do a very good job last year. And while everybody is focusing on the run because we did give up more rushing yards, if you look at our rush attempts, we were, the yards per attempt against our defense rushing was one of the best in the league, one of the lower in the league. What happened was people were extremely efficient against us passing. I don't know where we ended in the year, but almost every top quarterback against us had completed over 70, sometimes over 80% of their passes. So they knew they could pass against us. And so they'd pass, get up, and they'd run the score up or get ahead, and then they would run the ball. So it was kind of a lose situation for us. It made it look like our defense was maybe worse than it really was. But again, and part of that problem not only was the corners, but our linebackers were horrible in coverage. The two years in a row we struggled. So we'll see how things go this year. But I'm not real excited about the secondary by any means. So, getting back to news. So Dick Vermeil, he coached for the Eagles for a long time. Took us to the Super Bowl. So Philly Boy for Life, absolutely. It's hard to. We gave the secondary a hard job by not pressuring the quarterbacks as often and as much as I thought we should have, given the names that we had on our defensive line, and hopefully Jordan Davis is able to help with that. And we got Hassan Riddick, who had, I think, in the last 2 years was top or second or third in the league in sacks. So Hassan Riddick as a linebacker should be a big benefit. But I don't know. I still am not real. I'm not real excited about corners and safeties. Anthony Harris, he is serviceable. You're right, as a safety, but nobody was remarkable. So. Some roster moves that you're probably aware of, but I'll go over real quick. We Brandon Brooks, he retired, right? So we don't have him anymore. Although I'm not sure how much of an impact he would have made. We signed defensive back Andre Chikari, wide receiver Greg Ward, and we tendered Nate Herbig, which he ended up being released today officially. We were hoping to get a trade, but nobody was willing to trade for him, so we released Nate Herbig. Greg Ward, man, I'll tell you, that is a guy who. That's a guy who I'm really, I guess I'm disappointed. 2 years ago, he was open all the time. and just didn't get looked at by Wentz 3 years ago. And then he got a little bit more action when Jalen Hurts came in, but Jalen Hurts didn't look at him either, and then he got replaced because we drafted Devonta Smith. So we signed him, and I hope we keep him, but I hope we play him more often because he was open often when he was out there. I mentioned we signed linebacker Hassan Riddick. We re-signed Anthony Harris to a 1-year contract. Signed wide receiver Zach Pascal from the Colts. I think that was a good move. Re-signed defensive end Derek Barnett. Signed linebacker Kaiser White. Signed wide receiver Devin Allen. And I agree, Philly Boy for life. Totally undervalued. Greg Ward. I hope we're talking about Greg Ward here. I think we are, but absolutely undervalued and underused. Signed wide receiver Devin Allen. Re-signed Fletcher Cox, and made sure we had Jason Kelsey locked up as well. I'm going to go over, I'm going to slowly go over these draft picks because the draft was just this past weekend. Next week, I'll do the next 3, the 3rd and the 2-6. And then I'm going to go over some of these somewhat recent signings, recent to me. I'll go over Zach Pascal and Reddick, go over some of their stats. But I like most of the moves we've made. I like the positions we've made. I'll be honest, and I'm not sure if I'm in the minority or majority. I'm not a Jalen Hurts fan. I was disappointed in how he played last year. He didn't progress the way I'd hoped he would. Hopefully, it was just a year and a half slump, second year slump, and he's able to recover. At the same time, I don't know what our options would have been. The big name quarterbacks went elsewhere, and there was nobody in the draft. So I don't know that we have many options, but we'll see. Hopefully, I'm wrong. Hopefully, he has a great year. All right, a little bit of NFL news. The Colts and the Eagles suggested a rule change that was accepted in postseason. In overtime now, in postseason overtime, each team is insured 1 offensive possession. So instead of in the situation where the person that wins the coin toss can score a touchdown and win and the end of the game, that will no longer be the case. Each team will get an offensive possession. So if the first team scores a touchdown, the team that lost the coin toss or that didn't get the ball first at least gets a shot. I don't know how I feel about that. I was a fan of sudden death that regardless of who won the coin toss, if they scored, they won. And I guess I was okay with not being able to win by a field goal, but at the same time, you shouldn't really rely on winning because of your offense, right? I mean, in theory, you should have a solid offense and defense. So if you lose the coin toss and the other team gets the ball, your defense should stop them. I think that's part of being a complete team. So I'm okay with sudden death. In fact, I'd rather actual sudden death. Whoever gets the coin toss, if they score a field goal or touchdown, they win. But I'm in the minority, especially when it comes to NFL owners, because they all voted and agreed to change the overtime rules so that both teams get a chance. Okay. That's it for some Eagles news from roster moves. I'll go into more detail about those next week. Try and keep the show real quick since we're in the off season. But I do have the bald eagle fact, world famous bald eagle fact, one of my favorite parts of the podcast here. And I do something different every week. We rotate from every year that the Eagles have been in the NFL from the first year, 1933. We do each NFL draft. We do each player that was inducted into the Hall of Fame, things like that. And so this time, because it was just recently the NFL draft, we're doing the 7th ever NFL draft, which occurred in it was technically a 1942 draft, but occurred in 1941. Actually held on December 22nd, 1941. And back then, it did rotate cities. It was at the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago. Now, the draft was much different back then. Every team got 20 picks. So I think there was 220 picks total. There were 11 teams at the time. Out of all those picks, only 2 of them were inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Bill Dudley, who was the first overall pick by Pittsburgh, and Max Speedy, who was 135th overall by Detroit. I'm going to run over the Eagles picks. Most of these guys played 1 year or no year. Some of them went straight to the military. This was during World War II, which I think is, when you think about the way players are now, only playing one way and being so concerned with injuries, kind of shows you how different the world was when not only were these guys playing Ironman so both ways, but they were also leaving to go to World War II and then returning and playing football again. So round one, third overall pick, we chose Pete Kametovic. He was a halfback from Stanford, only played for the Eagles during the 1946 season. Since he was drafted in 42 and he didn't play till 46, I didn't confirm this, but odds are he went to World War II. Round two, number 13 overall, Vik Linskog. He was a center from Stanford. He actually played for the Eagles from 1944 to 1951, longest Eagle of this draft. He was a first-team All-Pro in 1951. Of course, he was with the Eagles when they won both of their NFL championships, 1948 and 1949. Third round, 18th overall, Ted Williams, a back from Boston College. He only played 1 year in 1942. Round four, 28th overall, Gordon Pashka, a guard from Minnesota. He played 1 year in 1943, and that was when we were called the Steagles. If you aren't familiar, during World War II, because a lot of the NFL players went to the war, they didn't have enough people to field a team. So the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles combined to make the Steagles, so they could continue playing and not miss a game. Round four, 28th overall, we drafted Gordon Pashka. Oh, I'm sorry, that I already mentioned him, guard from Minnesota. The interesting thing about him, and I didn't research this to see if they figured out what happened, but he went missing after a fishing trip on Rainy Lake, which is a lake that is between the border of the United States and Canada, on June 9th, 1964. So I don't know if they ever found him. Maybe he drowned, or I don't know. I don't know if he was with guys and they. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I thought that was an interesting fact. Round five, 33rd overall, Ernie Blandon, a tackle from Tulane. Round six, 43rd overall, Earl Younglove, an end from Washington. Round seven, 53rd overall, Billy Seawell, back from Washington State. And if I don't give you any details about the player, like I just did about Billy Seawell, it means there was no information. Most likely he didn't play at all in the NFL. And that happened often because salaries weren't that good in the NFL. The NFL was still kind of struggling financially. It wasn't nearly what it is now. If you get drafted in the NFL now, you play. You definitely play. Round eight, 63rd overall, Bill Haverson, a guard from Oregon State. He played for 1 year for the Eagles. Then he served in World War II. What's up, Ivan? I'm glad you're watching, Ivan, and that must mean Ivan is he's related. He's like my nephew-in-law. I don't know. He's a little kid, and I guess he converted from being a Giants fan to an Eagles fan. Congratulations, Ivan, for making that move. It's a very smart choice on your part. And thanks for watching. So we had Bill Haverson. Nice to see you too, Ivan. That's his mom's login, by the way. Okay, so went with Bill Halverson. Guard from Oregon State, again, served 1 year, then went to World War II. Round 9, 73rd overall, Ray Graves, a center from Tennessee. He played from 1942 to 1946. He then coached college and professional from 1944 to 1969, and then was the athletic director at Florida from 1960 to 1979. So a long career, not specifically for the Eagles, but in sports and in football. All right, I'll be nice. Ivan still likes the Giants. That's okay. Not everybody's perfect. Everybody has their faults, so it's okay. Round 10, 83rd pick overall, Jack Stackpool, a back from Washington. Played 1 year in 1942, then served in World War II. Round 11, 93rd pick overall, Noble Doss, a back from Texas. Played for 2 seasons, 1947 and 1948. Round 12, 103rd pick overall, Fred Meyer, an end from Stanford. He played for the Eagles in 1942 and 1945. In between those 2 years, he was serving in World War II. In his first season in 1942, he was 6th in the NFL in receiving yards. Now, 6th in the NFL in receiving yards back then meant he had 324 yards. 5th in receiving yards per game, and that was 32 yards per game. Anybody that's done any research on the history of the NFL, you'll find that running backs and quarterbacks had all of the yards because most of the time they ran the ball. They thought of the passing game as almost everything was a long ball when they passed, and interceptions were common. It was very common for quarterbacks to have the same amount or more interceptions than they did touchdowns, and that didn't mean they were bad back then. Very different than it is in the NFL now. The average completion percentage, I think, was in the 40s to 50s, and again, that wasn't bad. Round 13, 113 overall, Bob Brenton, tackle from Missouri. Round 14, 123rd overall, John Winehick, guard from Alabama. He served in the Navy in World War II, and then afterwards he rejoined the Eagles to play 1 year in 1946. Round 15, 133rd overall, Odell Griffin, a guard from Baylor. Round 16, 143rd overall, Bill Smaltz, a back from Penn State. Never played for the Eagles, but coached at Juniata and NC State from 1946 to 1970. I think he was both an assistant and a head coach. Round 17, 153rd overall, Arnie Miners, an end from Stanford. Round 18, 163rd overall, Bill Braun, a tackle from Santa Clara. Round 19, 173rd overall, Charlie Dvorak, back from Texas Tech. What was the signing bonus for a player in 1942? Paul Mancini. Excellent question. No idea. I know that I looked up contracts around that time, and I think they were in the area of $5,000 to $10,000 a year. I don't think they got signing bonuses in 1942, but annual salaries were in the area of $5,000 to $10,000 a year. Now with inflation, I think that's close to 80 or so, 80 or 90,000, 100,000 a year now, which was good money back then, good enough to live off of, but nothing like what they're making now. Yeah. And then our last sack of potatoes. Yeah. It wasn't much. Salaries were very low in the 40s, as again, the league didn't have a lot of money to begin with. In fact, I think in doing some of my previous podcasts, when I think the year after we won the national champion, the NFL championship, I think we were struggling financially, which is odd to say, but I think in 1948, after that season, I think they offered one of the players extra money, and he turned it down because he knew that the league and the team weren't financially secure. Again, another crazy thing where he would turn down a raise, but for the betterment of the team. But different times, right? And our last pick, round 20, 183 overall, Marv Tomervik, back from Pacific Lutheran. He didn't play either. He served in the Navy in World War II. All right, that is the Bald Eagle Fact. That is the end of the Bald Eagle podcast. Do me a favor. Go on to Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, almost every social media. I'm not on TikTok. I will never be on TikTok. I'm not on Snapchat either. Bald Eagle 4133 or the Bald Eagle podcast. Make sure you have the in there or you won't find me. Watch my new episodes. Every episode's live on Wednesday at 6 on every social media, including YouTube. And do me a favor, watch all the podcasts on the Philly Sports Alliance. On Mondays, we have the Football Smack Talk show at 6 p.m. that has Ryan Reese and Eric Ward. On Tuesdays, we have also on Mondays at 7:30, you have the Diamond Club podcast. The Diamond Club podcast has John Hunter, Chris Lahef, and Danny Hart, and it's all Phillies. On Tuesdays, we have the Philly Broadcast at 6:30. The Philly Broadcast is a 4 for 4. They talk about all Philly sports, and that is featuring Ryan Reese and Ryan Finneran. Wednesday, the Bald Eagle podcast, only Eagles, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Wednesdays at 8 p.m., Mixed Sports. Mixed Sports is all about all sports, all 4 sports, not just Philadelphia. Thursdays, we have Tendies on Pattison, which is a Flyers podcast at 5:30 p.m. And then that's featuring Paul Batcho, Jack Griffin, and Chris Lahef. It's all Flyers. And then last but not least, on Thursdays at 7, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. That is featuring Eric Ward and Joe Barry, and that is a wrestling podcast. So we got you covered almost every sport. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thanks for sharing. Go Birds.